not going to be using this for the first like 2 seconds of my speech. I hope everybody is okay with that. Anybody would be lucky to date me. I was what my teachers called a pleasure to have in class. I was also what my classmates called obnoxious during awards because I was constantly standing up to receive them. And because I didn't have any friends in elementary school and you're all required to be here, I'm going to be sharing some of those awards with you today. This is just one of my awards for straight A's all year. This is my award for ultra awesome attendance because when I was sick, not even my mom wanted to hang out with me. And this is my Presidential Academic Excellence Award because even Obama thought I was great. Now, while myself and many others thrived on this sort of attention in mainly elementary and middle school, the implications of being a gifted and talented or a GATE student are hefty and oftentimes damaging. So today we're going to be closing the gate on gifted and talented programs. First, we're going to be exploring how gifted and talented students are identified in the first place. Then we're going to be going over the harms and the negative implications of these gifted and talented programs before finally going over one simple, mind-blowing solution. So let's hop right into it. And what should come as a shock to literally no one at all, especially if you grew up in the public school system, the way that we identify gifted and talented children all comes down to a test. And not even one of those weird standardized tests that you had to study for like 2 weeks in 5th grade. No, it's pretty subjective. The Tenney School District, for example, tells teachers to do a broad screening of all of their subjects so that way they can weed out the inferior kids and essentially put the gifted kids into this higher elevated class because as we all know, the worst thing a 7-year-old can be is average. Now, this might not be such a big deal if the definition of gifted and talented wasn't also as broad. The definition of gifted and talented, according to the Maryland Public School District, one of just hundreds of school districts within the United States who has their own definition, is a student who excels at art, reading, music, writing, math, etc. So essentially the working definition that we have is a student who excels above their peers just a little bit more than normal. Now, because the definitions are so broad, you might not think that there'd be any negative implications, but you'd be wrong. And if you're a fellow gifted and talented burnout such as myself, you know how soul-crushing being wrong can be. Now, Tom Wyman, who's a writer for Outline Magazine, takes a scathing approach to these gifted kid burnouts in his article, How Bad Should We Really Feel for Gifted and Talented Burnouts? He essentially describes them as people who will sit curled up on their phones, scrolling through social media, ignoring their friends, their family, their peers, their bosses, if they don't get the instant gratification that they crave. So I know that Tom never got Student of the Month in elementary school. Sorry, Tom. But he couldn't be any more wrong. According to the National Association for Gifted and Talented Students, students who are identified as gifted in elementary school are 15% more likely to be diagnosed with adolescent depression. And this is because of something that Dr. Ann Smith calls never enough syndrome. Essentially, it's perfectionism. And anybody who is formerly gifted and talented or a 3 on the Enneagram will tell you that it's a really big weight on your shoulders. Essentially what happens is that from an incredibly young age, these children are identified as gifted. They're expected to do well on all of their exams, interact well with their peers, and to constantly be perfect, even though they can never actually achieve that. Essentially, that causes them to feel like even though they can never be perfect, to always be perfect. It's this really intense cycle. Be perfect, but then you can't be perfect, and then for the first time in your life, you get a B, and then you're really, really upset about the B, and then you keep getting Bs, and then, oh my gosh, you're never gonna go to an Ivy League school, and you're gonna end up speaking to a bunch of public speaking classes about why you didn't want to be gifted and talented student at this weird private Christian college. It's kind of sad. And it's making me really sad to talk about, so it's a good thing I'm on antidepressants now. Yeah! I normally usually take them during my after-dinner speaking rounds, but I felt like that would be a little bit inappropriate here. Now, there's one simple, mind-blowing solution to the issues that gifted and talented children exhibit. Everybody get in really close, because this is going to blow your mind. We let kids be kids. The University of Connecticut did a study where they implemented what they called the school-wide learning module into 50 schools all across Connecticut and New York. And essentially what the school-wide learning module did is it let children explore things that they naturally excelled in, whether that be math, reading, writing, etc., but without the label of gifted and talented. Now, anybody who is familiar with the Gifted and Talented program knows that the way it probably worked was you were pulled out of a classroom to focus on your gift for part of the day, and then went back to your classroom for part of the day. And that's exactly what the school-wide learning module is. The only difference is that there are no labels. Kids are just allowed to be kids. It's not you're dumb if you're not gifted, or you're gifted so you're put above your peers. It's you're kids and you have natural abilities. So let's take a step back and examine everything that we talked about today. First, we went over how, to no one's surprise, gifted and talented education all comes down to a test. And even though all of the definitions that we have are really broad, there's still a lot of negative implications, included in being a gifted and talented burnout such as myself. Before finally going over one simple, mind-blowing solution. Now, I know, I, as a gifted and talented burnout who's on antidepressants, is incredibly attractive to all of us. But I think something that's more attractive is a generation of children who are raised to know their worth and to value their mental health. So advocate for not having gifted and talented programs. I'm sure some of you are education majors. Say no to placing kids above or below one another. Thank you.
Very good.